one of the first things the information that you need is what do they want the system for, I suppose.
Yes.
And that's going to be whether it's just for a garden system, just irrigating, lawns, things like that, washing cars, or do they want to take the water back into the house, use it for the toilets, maybe the washing machine, that kind of thing.
Right.
There are different types of tanks. You've got like your Carat tank here. Now that tank basically comes in two halves and is then put together. The beauty of this is if you've got a few tanks going to the same place, they can all be stacked up on one pallet.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so they'll...
Yeah,
so
they go inside each other like that.
That's right, yeah. So, I mean, you can send sort of the smaller tanks, you'll get sort of 7 on a pallet, all going to the same site, rather than a platinum tank like this, which is going to take up a lot more room, cost a lot more to get the product there. They all come with sort of installation guides, that sort of thing, but basically this tank has a rubber seal that goes in here. It then gets clipped together with various clips around the outside. That'll be easier to see later on when we get outside. We then have, each tank then has its own dome, which is where all the pipe work comes into, both from the sort of water coming from the roof and then also from the pump to go off to garden taps, whatever. And then they all have a telescopic lid then, that then you can set to your ground level basically.
So how big, just to get an idea of scale, how big is, say, that? Is it
okay, so the smallest one of these is 2,700 litres.
Yeah.
And the dimensions of that, the tank is probably about the width of this table.
Right.
Probably just a bit shorter than the length, and height-wise it's 1.4 metres deep. That's that main part. Then you've got 600ml there, and then 300ml of lid, basically.
Yeah, we have all the lids and everything down the shed, so you'll see it in the actual.
The biggest one of these is 6,500 litres. Again, looks exactly the same, just on a bigger scale. And then, if you want to then start collecting more water, then you basically just link these tanks together, just to create a bigger tank. And that's the same with these other tanks as well.
So how would that work with it pumping between the tanks?
What happens is you've got these areas just here and here.
Yeah.
These get drilled out and a seal put in.
Right.
And then there'll just be a 4-inch underground pipe linking that tank to the next tank.
Right.
All the water. What you tend to do when you're linking tanks is you'll have one tank like this with a lid on it, and then the other tanks will basically be 2 bottom halves. So rather than having a hole in the top, that will be a sealed tank. So each then extension tank is completely sealed.
Right.
The water comes into this dome and out of this dome, so then all the others will kind of fill. There'll be a pipe at the top, pipe at the bottom, so they'll all fill at the same time, basically.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
With regards to tank, these tanks here, as I say, good to get onto site. Thing with these is it's quite a much deeper excavation.
Right.
So typically, a tank, the smallest tank, you're probably going to have to dig down sort of 2.5 metres.
Right.
Once you get up to the bigger ones, you're sort of digging down about 3 metres. Which means you've got to excavate a bigger area because of the depth you're going down, and you need a bigger machine for that kind of thing. The
space to be able to move the soil and all that kind of thing. So
that's right. So that's where the shallow tank is a lot simpler to install, I'd say. Basically, the depth of these doesn't change much. The principle is exactly the same. The dome on these is built into it. So what you'll find is there's a kind of an inlet and an outlet, and you can either bring your pipework round to the right hole or think about which way around you're installing your tank. Lid is exactly the same lid, and both tanks come with two different types of lid. There's a pedestrian lid and a vehicle loading lid, and it just depends where it's going as to which lid you need. With these, the depth of the tank doesn't change much. It's just the kind of size of the tank, and you'll see when we get outside that you can see the difference.
Yeah.
So, sort of the principle is all your downpipes from your roof go underground into a 4-inch pipe. They then all come together before entering the tank. So probably easiest to look at any of these pictures. So what we've got here is all the pipes are coming together and they're entering through this point just here. Again, this will be a lot easier to see outside really. But within the dome of the tank is then a filter. And close up of the filter here. So it's just a bit bigger, we can see it. So the pipe's coming in here. The water then runs onto this sort of metal gauze there and drops down through into the tank. Right. Any leaves and things come, they can just wash over the filter. That's connected to the overflow, which then goes off to either a storm drain or to a separate soakaway.
Right. So, in theory, you don't have to get in there and be scraping out loads of leaves and nuts.
No. Will you have to maintain that though?
Yeah, you will sort of get sand and grit and things like that coming down off the roof.
Yeah.
Over a period of time, that can sort of silt up over that filter. Obviously, if that silts up completely, then all the water's going to wash straight over the top and down the overflow rather than going down into the tank. Yeah. So it's just a case, and that's going to change from one house to another depending where the house is. If it's surrounded by trees, then you're likely to get a lot of leaves coming down. So once you first install it, really it's a case of maybe after 3 months having a look. What's it like? If there's a lot of build up on it, okay, we need to be servicing it that often. When it comes to sort of cleaning the filter, it's literally a case of lifting a disc that's on the lid. You can then reach down and this filter has just got a little handle on it. You literally just lift that out, wash it off and pop it back down again.
And all the lids have child safety locks on, so no children can open it and then obviously go into the tank.
Platin tank, same principle. It's actually like a sort of a tube, but again the water's coming into the middle of the tube, dropping down through, and all the debris passing through and down the overflow. So there's a couple of different types of filter. We've got the Optimax and Minimax, which they both work in the same principle, as in 95% of the water will drop down into the tank. 5% will wash through or over the filter, helping to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, because you need something to be kind of just...
That's right, just kind of flushing through. So this type of filter, it's 95% yield, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah? Your other type of filter is a basket filter. And these, again, go for the Carat tank and the Platin tank.
Right.
Now these are 100% yield. What happens is the water comes in, everything drops into this basket, any debris and things is collecting in the basket, and the water just falls through into the tank. Yeah. If you know your house is, got a lot of trees around it, you know that there's going to be a lot coming down off the roof.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're overflowing to a soakaway rather than a storm drain, what you don't want is a lot of leaves and debris washing down into your soakaway and basically filling up your soakaway with debris. So in that instance, that's where you would probably favour a basket filter. You're collecting all the water. You are likely to have to maintain that more often, and again, it's going to depend where your house is.
Presumably, is that one just a little bit easier to be able to just kind of lift out?
It's really the same, yeah. Lift the lid, pull the handle up, empty the stuff out, give it a rinse over, drop it back in again. So, both are just as easy.
Every couple of months, depending.
Yeah, it really does depend. I mean, I'd say look at it after a couple of months, see what it's like. If it's not too bad, then you can leave it a bit longer, and once the system's in and working for a period of time, then you get an idea. Yeah, that's right.
Sticks from the town, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And typically, a lot of these are going into sort of new builds and things like that. So it's a building site. There's a lot of dust and dirt flying around to start with. So fairly typical that's going to land on you, settle on your roof, get washed down into the tank. So to start with, you're likely to probably see more coming down through anyway. And that should sort of ease off over time.
Is that what the majority of these go to at the moment? Is it like new builds and new
Well, the thing with the new build is obviously with these underground tanks, you have got to dig a fairly big hole in somebody's garden to install that, and it's more expensive than an above ground tank. But if it's done whilst the house is being built, you've got diggers on site, things like that. So to just dig another hole isn't so much of an issue,
you just put it exactly where you want it.
And not so much with the garden system, but with the house system. Once you then start to use the water in the house, you're then looking at doing separate plumbing from the harvesting system directly to the toilets and maybe the washing machine. Whereas in an existing house, it's likely to have the same sort of cold water feed to the toilets as it is to the sinks. So to then put one of these retrofit one of these systems, you've then got to be able to separate all that pipe work, which means, exactly. On some houses it's not. It might be that downstairs toilet and bathroom are on an outside wall, one above the other. It's quite easy. You've only got to sort of maybe get in at one point and then get that water between the two. So that's really where it does kind of really change depending on each house. For some houses it might not be a viable option. It really does
old
depend.
rambling house with stuff all over the place. It'd be...
Exactly, So
if you're attached to people as well, it's a bit more hassle, isn't it?
You might get asked a question between the difference of also rainwater and grey water. And what they mean by grey water is water that comes from, it's already used water from washing machines, sinks and things like that. So if they ask you what grey water is, that's what's
completely different, So all we're talking about is water from your roof. Sometimes drainage from kind of surface areas, like your driveway can come down to like a channel drain. You don't want that water to be going into the tank. So again, on a retrofit system, it might be that drainage has been linked together because it all goes down a storm drain. The problem with that is that you can have oils and things coming off vehicles which you don't want to be going, into your tank.
Be a lot more mucky than your roof,
exactly. So then that would need to be separated. Again, that's a reason why it's more popular on kind of new builds rather than, it's not impossible. But there might be more work involved in converting an existing.
More eco-friendly now, aren't they, as well? So building a new house, they think, how can I save money?
That's right. I mean, one of the main selling points of rainwater harvesting is that you can save up to 50% of your mains water usage by using it, just washing your car, flushing your toilets, washing machine. And more and more people are having to pay for mains water now.
I was going to say, with like water meters, it's not really as relevant, is it, if you're not on a meter?
If you're not on a meter,
you feel good.
Exactly. The information that you need to know to start with is to know how much water can be collected. So your first question really is, what is the roof area that you're collecting off.
Yeah.
That will give you a figure as to how much water they can collect. Basically, it's a simple sort of calculation on a spreadsheet. You can get the tank size calculator, online.
Right.
We can provide you with that.
Yeah, that would be very useful.
That will, you'll put in the roof area. That will, and you've got sort of like rainfall figures for the area of the country that it's going into.
Okay.
That will then give you a potential yield for the system.
So does that work online then? With the postcode or?
Yeah, I mean we've got that information, so we can just provide you with that.
Just got a map.
And then it's just a case of filling in, the
Yeah.
boxes. There's a map with sort of general areas, basically highlighting the rainfall statistics for that area. So on one side you've got the yield, so that is how much water can you collect.
Yeah.
You then look at the usage. So if you're using it back in the house, you want to know how many toilets there are, how many people are in the house.
Yeah, what they want to use it for.
Yeah, basically what they want to use it for. Are they going to be using it in the garden? If so, have they got a big garden? That kind of thing. Because the idea with rainwater harvesting is that the water isn't sat in the tank for a long period of time. What you want is you want it coming into the tank, and then within about 3 weeks you want that, to be used, basically. So it's a constant cycle, so you haven't got the water stagnating in the tank. So once you've got how much you can collect, how much you're going to use, you'll then go off the lower figure. Yeah. So it might be there's a huge roof, but there's only one person in the property. You might be able to collect a lot of water, but if the water's not being used, then you're going to have the water sat in this tank for a long period of time. So instead, you would say, okay, well they're only using this much. We'll go for the smaller tank, so we haven't got that volume of water sat in there.
What kind of issue you get, like algae buildup?
Yeah, I mean it's not so bad with
when they're
underground.
Like
You haven't got the heat and things like that, but it does want to, and the way the water comes in, it comes in through the filter, but then it goes down through a stability pipe, and calm fills into the tank. So it fills at the bottom, overflows at the top. So that does sort of create a circular motion of the water anyway, which does help.
So I've been speaking to Anna about she's putting the Hercules tanks overground with using it inside the house. We do not recommend using it overground because, like Jamie says, you can get algae build up, and then it does flush back through the house and it can block it up. So if someone were to have it overground, we'd probably recommend a header tank as well, or just to keep the tank away from the sunlight and in the shade, so it doesn't get all that constant heat on it and exposure to the sunlight, and then obviously the algae will build up, the water will go all horrid, and then it'll be flushed through, and they'll probably start to see it in their toilets if they were to have it in a house, and it might start to smell and things like that. No.
Your other issue with an above ground tank is during the winter, with it freezing.
Yeah.
Obviously below ground it's protected from the frost. So the system, you can use it all the time. With an above ground tank, you tend to, during the winter periods, be able to harvest a lot of rain, but if you've got an above ground tank, you're likely to have to drain off that tank so that it's not full with water, so that it can't freeze. Because obviously if it's full with water and it freezes, water will expand, probably crack the tank. And also any pumps and things inside are basically a body of water, which it will just mess up the pump. So that's really why, particularly if you're using it back in the house, you really do want an underground tank.
So which one would it be if somebody said, no, I absolutely, definitely want to have an above ground tank?
Hercules.
It would be Hercules, but obviously outside rather than inside.
And you just have to make them aware that it isn't frost proof, so chances are in the winter you are going to have to drain it down. Not so bad if you're in your garden, because you know you're not likely to want to water things during the winter anyway.
Yeah,
So if it's just being used for irrigation, then that's not really a problem. You can just, you know, it's starting to get cold, drain it off, probably take the pump out, you know, and then, you know, when you get to sort of March time and you want to start watering things, then you get it back up in operation again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the tanks and the filtering of the water. So that's kind of like the collection principle of it. There are kind of other things that determine which tank is more suitable, and that sort of comes down to the location of the tank and whether there's any problem with kind of groundwater and things like that. It's probably not something that people are likely to know. As in, until you start digging, you're not likely to know, you know, kind of where the water table is within a garden.
Yeah.
Basically, these tanks here, they're okay in groundwater up to halfway.
So that's a carrot.
So that's a carrot tank. Again, you know, you're not likely to be able to get an answer off most people.
Yeah.
But somebody might say, my garden floods every year.
Yes.
Have you got a tank that's suitable? So, carrot tank, when it's empty, they're all, you know, based on when it's empty. Groundwater can build up to there, any higher, and this is likely to pop out of the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Platin tank, obviously a lot shallower anyway. You're alright if groundwater builds up to the main body of the tank there.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So typically, probably only sort of 500-600 below the ground level,
Yeah.
and that will be okay. If you've got an area that is prone to flooding, then there's a donut-shaped tank called a rhombus tank,
Right.
and that is okay in groundwater up to the ground, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Which tank was that, sorry?
It's called a rhombus tank, RONDUS.
We've got that one.
No, you haven't got information on that.
Right. You know,
I'll send some over.
yeah, it's exactly
It's
the
like
same
that, but with
principle.
a
It's
hole.
like this. Yeah, you know, I'll show you one outside. It's just that somebody might say to you, you know, is it possible to put it in this location?
Yeah.
To which you say, yes. I mean, if it's going to flood completely, then you wouldn't want to be putting the tank there,
Right.
because you've got all these seals for pipe work, things like that. If the water's covered in, then it's going to probably get in through the very kind of, you know, the top disc of the tank,
Right.
and potentially kind of, you know, all that kind of filtering that you've done, you know, is going to be destroyed. Yeah, exactly.
If they do ever get problems with major flooding, then we do have solutions here. So you just send us their details and we'll speak to them. I have included a brochure into it, but we've never spoken to you about it. It's called attenuation. So the crates actually go under the ground, and it stores all the water and releases it slowly. But there's a brochure in there if you ever want to have a look at it, but we haven't spoken to you about it yet.
Yeah, so somebody gets kind of a freak,
Yeah.
flood,
Yeah. Definitely.
panic. Okay.
Especially the mind burn, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you can collect the water.
Yeah.
Then you want to think about systems of using it.
Okay.
So, garden comfort system. What we've got is a submersible pump in the tank.
Okay.
Yep, and that's this red thing here. It comes with a length of yellow hose, and then it comes with really 2 points that you can take the water from. There's an internal hose connection box,
Okay.
which again is easier to show you, you know, when we're going to look at the products later. But that fits in the lid of the tank, and actually you'll see it on the DVD when we show you that. And then there's an external hose connection box, which can be plumbed in sort of at any point in the garden.
Oh, right, that's cool.
And you can have it comes with one of those and one of those, but you could then, you know, kind of sell additional hose external. Yeah. So what can happen is everything is then underground, and it's the external hose connection box. It's basically a smaller version of this, disc about that big, which will just lay flat on your lawn. You'll lift up a cover, and like the hose lock connections, you'll literally just clip your hose on, and the pump pressurises all the water in the pipework to each point.
Right.
As soon as you couple onto that and there's a drop in pressure, the pump will then power up and supply the water. As soon as you turn that tap off, it repressurises all the water in the pipe and then shuts itself off.
Right, okay.
So all you need...
So you never have to like physically go and turn it on or off?
No, you just literally have a power supply from somewhere to that pump, and then it takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Now obviously with the garden system, once you run out of water in that tank, the pump has got a dry run protection, so it'll just turn itself off if there's no water, and then you'll just have to use a mains tap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there like a backup?
A mains water backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can incorporate that into a garden system,
Right.
and the next system which you can use when you're taking it into the house. Obviously, you need water all the time if you're taking it to the toilets, washing machine. It would be the same principle as in a submersible pump, pumping directly to your appliances and your outside tap. But then what you've got is you have a float switch within the tank. This is demonstrated here.
Okay.
So you have a float switch in the tank, located near the bottom part of the tank. When that drops down, that will then open up a solenoid valve on a mains water backup unit.
Right.
And what it will do is it will transfer some mains water into the bottom part of that tank till the float switch comes up.
Okay.
Yeah. So all you're doing is putting a small amount of mains water into this tank, making sure that there's always water for the submersible pump to pump to things. And that's known as a direct system, basically.
So what makes it a direct system?
Direct system is where you've got a submersible pump pumping directly to the appliances.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was having a look yesterday and I was getting very confused.
Yeah.
Direct.
So direct.
Explain this to Anna.
So direct is pumping directly to the appliances.
To the appliances.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh yes, and maybe the ones with the tank.
The head tank.
Yeah. So that's your first type of system when you're starting to use it back in the house.
Yeah.
Or it could be that you might want to use that system in the garden. You know, if you haven't got any mains water tap anywhere, then it might be that tank needs to supply water all the time to a tap or whatever. In which case you might look to back up.
So you can incorporate in that garden, you can incorporate the float switch and have the same.
Yeah,
system.
you'd basically. Yeah, you'd be selling the garden comfort system with the additional mains water backup.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How the water companies were setting all that up?
Sorry.
How the water companies were
The reason that you have to use a kind of unit like this or similar is that you have to have a ton dish and an air gap for the mains water to drop into and gravity feed back to the tank.
Right.
Because what you can't have is a mains pipe plumbed directly into the tank.
Right.
Because the water level can kind of back siphon up that tank into your mains water and then contaminate the mains water.
Right.
So every kind of top-up system has a ton dish and an inch air gap, basically.
So there's no chance of that.
So there's no chance, even if that water builds back up this pipe, it will then overflow. It can't get into the mains pipe.
Okay.
So that's what you have to incorporate.
Right.
Obviously, once you start to use a mains water backup, then you are incorporating mains water into that system. So, like we've had a hose pipe ban recently. If you don't have a mains water backup system on this, then that's fine. You can use that water Once it runs out, you have to wait for more rain. You're just solely relying on the rain there. As soon as you introduce a mains water backup system, sort of into that, then it could be argued that you can't then use that system really, because you can't determine what's being used. So if that's if people are saying, I want the system to be able to use it during a hosepipe ban, then strictly speaking,
not really
you shouldn't have that mains water backup on it.
I suppose it depends on the council, though, doesn't it? If they're willing to or not.
Well, it
depends what it's feeding as well, I suppose. If it's because of the whole things with like the rules on the irrigation, you weren't allowed to actually use a physical hosepipe, but you were allowed to use little drip irrigation systems and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
it's a bit of a
it does
grey
depend
area.
where you're using it. It does. So using it back in the house, you've got your direct system. You've then got your indirect system.
Right.
So what you're doing then is that is basically a header tank up in your loft space.
Right.
What you're doing is you've got a submersible pump in the tank. That's pumping the water up into the header tank.
Right.
Now the header tank has got kind of two feeds of water, two supplies of water. It's got two ball valves in the header tank. One set slightly higher than the other. The top one is your feed from the rainwater tank outside. So if that ball valve drops, your pump outside will kick in and top up the header tank.
Right.
If you run out of water outside, obviously that can't supply the water up because the pump switched itself off with its dry run protection. The water level in the header tank will drop, and then it'll fill with mains water. And that's a direct kind of connection of mains water into that header tank.
Right. So it's not going from that
So
to
what
that
you're
to
not
your
doing,
tank, it's going...
you're not transferring mains water into your tank outside.
Right, okay.
Obviously, in transferring water into your tank outside, you are taking up some space that could be filled with rainwater in a direct feed system. With the indirect, you're not transferring your mains water into that tank, so you're leaving that space empty to be filled with rainwater when it does rain.
Yeah.
And then you're just topping up a small header tank with mains water.
Sounds like a better option.
That's then gravity feeding down to your toilets.
Yeah.
It can feed a washing machine, although certain washing machines need a kind of a certain pressure to be able to work. So it might not be suitable for all washing machines. And again, when you're looking at a header tank system, particularly if you're looking to use it on a washing machine, then you're really looking at a two-storey house rather than a bungalow.
Right.
Yeah.
The bungalow, you're not going to get, the higher you take the header tank, the more the more pressure and flow you get out of that header tank down to the appliances. So you, in a bungalow, it's going to be okay if it's just feeding some toilets. You're not going to get enough pressure to feed your washing machine. You also probably wouldn't recommend the header tank to feed outside taps. A third system that I believe you're supplying is an Eco Plus system.
Right.
What we've got there is a
The Home Eco Plus.
Right, okay. So just going back to the indirect system, that's really only for use within the house, basically. You wouldn't say that it's for
a garden.
No. What you've got is, because you're pumping the water kind of up into a header tank, the chances are you could use the water in the header tank quicker than it's kind of filling back up again.
Yeah.
So it's fine for toilets because it's only taking about 6 litres to fill a toilet.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got it on an outside tap, you start hooking it up to some kind of irrigation system or pressure washer or things like that. You can start to use the water quite quickly, and you stand a risk of kind of draining that water out of that header tank. What you can do if you're using a header tank is you could, where you're feeding from your submersible pump up to the header tank, you could branch off and take that to an outside tap. So what you've got then is you've got a pressured feed to your outside tap, so similar to the direct feed system. That's also supplying the header tank. Obviously with that tap then, you'll only have that water when you've got one water tank, because you're not putting any mains water there. But if you've got an outside tap somewhere else that's on mains, then that's not really, not really an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
So your third type of system is an Eco Plus system, which is this unit here.
Okay.
So this is going away from the kind of submersible pump in the tank and having an external pump.
Right.
So you'll have this unit somewhere in a building somewhere.
Right.
Needs to be a kind of, frost-proof area.
Yeah.
What this does is this sucks the water out of the tank outside. So you can have your rainwater harvesting tank set up to sort of 18 metres away from this unit.
Okay.
Can be further, but then you have to have another pump in the tank as well to get to kind of push the water to this tank. But what we've got here is we've got the pump. We've got then a small mains water chamber underneath the pump. That is fed with mains water via a ball valve. And then we've got this red valve here, which will decide whether to take the water from your tank outside or from the mains chamber.
Right.
So there'll be a float switch in the tank. When that drops down, rather than putting mains water into here, it's just going to say take the water from this little tank instead.
Right.
Yeah?
Right, I see.
So again, like the indirect system, we're not taking up that space in your outside tank with mains water. We're leaving that empty to fill up with rainwater. Silencio unit is very similar really to the Eco Plus, but what it's got is it indicates the kind of level of the water in your tank outside, and the kind of switching over point is determined by a level, so you can set that, let's say, when it gets down to 10%, take mains water rather than rainwater.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we saying that one as
Things
well?
like that. That I don't know.
No,
Don't know. Possibly not.
I don't think you're selling that.
Which are the
The home garden comfort, the home Eco Plus, and the header tank.
Yeah, okay. So the one indirect system and a tank and then down the others. Okay.
So this just means that when it rains, you're going to get the most from that basically, because you haven't already half-filled.
That's right.
Main source.
Yeah. What you might find is people are concerned about what happens if I get a power cut.
Right.
With the direct feed system, obviously you've got power going to that submersible pump. Without power you can't get any water to your appliances. That would be the same with this Eco Plus, because it's pumping both rainwater and mains water.
Right.
Yeah. With the indirect header tank system, because you've got that separate ball valve in the tank,
Yeah.
you will still fill that with mains water. So that's the kind of only system that isn't reliant on power.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so there's kind of pros and cons to...
Yeah, it's about what questions you need to ask your potential buyer, what they want it for, I think, really, isn't it? And then you can point them perhaps in a system that suits
You
that.
also set up like a little flowchart.
Yeah, you certainly want kind of that list, that list of
Yeah,
questions
I
really.
think we do.
What I'll do is I'll put together a sheet for you, so like the most basic questions, and then I'll do like sort of
That
a
would be
diagram
really
of what like the end system should be or anything like that.
Because then at least even if we
That'd be good for
don't
the
make a
website
decision
as well,
on the...
wouldn't it?
Yeah. If we,
FAQ on it. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Questions.
because even if then we don't make a decision on the phone with them, we can always come to you and be like, right,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this information.
Yeah.
Which
But you'd
one
probably
do
find
you
you'd have to
think?
do that at first, anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Until you get it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that's probably it for the systems really.